Hi all, let's have a look at another game of Paul Keres. So in the 1950 USSR Championship, he actually won this event, as well as 1951. So I would like to systematically go with you over some of the more interesting decisive games of Paul Keres in these two tournaments. So this is one playing with the black pieces now against Vladas Jonovich Mikenas, who is superseded, by the way. His son, Mikenas' son, is still alive, 60 years old, alias Mikenas, and with a FIDE rating, according to ChessGames.com, of 2072. So his son's still around. Mikenas died 82 years old in 1992. So this is way back in 1950. C4 for Mikenas. Paul Keres played the move e5. We have knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, e3. Now this actually has a little bit of venom. If black routinely plays a move like this, then knight takes e5 could be annoying. This sort of continuation is going to get white a small advantage. So we see a more passive square for the bishop being used. e7. Away from that, white plays d4, e takes, knight takes d4, black castled, bishop e2. Now Paul Keres played d5. That opens up his bishop. It tries to break white's d5 bind, which is a common feature of the English opening, this battle over the d5 square. After c takes d5, there's an avoidance of structural damage, potentially. On knight takes d5, maybe white can try and incur structural damage with knight takes c6. So we see instead a temporary kind of pawn sack in the form of knight b4. The very clever idea here black has is that if white now tries to support d5, can you see what cunning thing black can play here? It's actually rather subtle and tactically ingenious. If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video, what would you play here with black? Okay, not c6, because you might have the idea the queen takes and you're on the right track, but the wrong implementation here. After c6, white can just evict that knight and be laughing here with his extra pawn. No, the idea, same on with d4 and this knight c2 contraption. Knight takes e4, and on knight takes, queen takes d5, hitting both knights. And here black is doing very, very well. Then we do have the queen takes d4 coming in. For example, here queen takes d4. So with the idea of knight c2 check. Yeah, tactically ingenious stuff right in the opening here with this d5. It's really quite ingenious. So here we see white castling here and letting black just regain the pawn. Knight takes, queen takes, and white's idea perhaps here, a little bit of venom, hitting c7 here. We see c6, queen takes, knight takes, knight goes back to d4. It seems as though really black has not had that many problems though to deal with, and in fact after bishop f6, positionally it looks as though black's in great shape. If you look at this, bishop's hemmed in by its own pawn. Pressure on the center seems to be black's. If you look conversely, white hasn't got as much pressure as black has on the central squares at the moment. So it seems black's more than okay here. Rook d1, rook d8. White does dare play e4 here, leaving the knight temporarily a little bit loose looking. But now bishop e3 supporting it. Knight e6 challenging it. We have knight takes, bishop takes. So really, both players have got 2 bishops. There's a pawn majority over here. White's got pawn majority over here. Exchange of rooks, yes. Rook b1 now is played. If bishop takes, then there's rook a8 rebounding on white there on a2, and conversely here after rook b1, if takes, then rook a1 crashing down to a7 is unpleasant. Rook on the 7th. White's bishops are covering the entry points here against the rook, so both sides didn't really want to take each other's a2 or a7 pawns. We have c5 now, and actually this might be more significant. Now it's actually protected, and it's here that Paul Keres seems to have his endgame plotted with bishop d4. He doesn't mind a pawn coming to d4 here, which would leave a 2-2, equal pawns on this side, and black would have the more aggressive pawn chain with that d4 pawn, though, that passed pawn there. If ever white takes on d4, we have rook d1, and he prepares for the endgame with king f8. The king's going to come up and try and get to an aggressive square like e5. So king f1, king e7, bishop takes d4, rook takes d4, not minding the simplification. Of course, there's a risk. If it becomes too simplified, it's difficult to play for a win. Bishop c4, though, was played, which is quite committal. And it seems engines suggest that maybe black could have indeed taken on c4 here, and that would have led to an advantage. If, for example, the king coming up here is just in time hitting e4, and then we can stop f4, and this sort of position is actually more of an advantage for black. It seems as though white might be in a virtual zugzwang. In fact, he's going to be like potentially run out of moves in this position. So it seems as though that was a missed opportunity to just simply take on c4. So it's interesting. Okay, bishop g4. This is more elaborate stuff now. Bishop's coming around like this. King d6. Okay, the bishop is holding f7. King comes to e5. Bishop d5, b6, bishop c6. Now f6, which means the bishop can zigzag back in the game. g5 stopping any f4 for the moment. Bishop f7. And also the bishop, potentially can go like this into white's position to hit f3 at some point. And it does so. Bishop b3 now. After this g3, it does weaken f3. But white was interested in stopping the use of the f4 square, because then, or maybe other things as well. He was just a bit worried about it. It seems to, it's a bit loosening. So bishop b3 now, with the bishop coming to d1, is a concern. And it's here things get really critical. After bishop d1, there's a move here which, as I say, when you simplify, sometimes you do run the risk of not having that much of an advantage with accurate play. White might have missed a key opportunity here. Mikenas might have missed the key opportunity. He played actually f4 check. This might not be as good as, can you see what else white could play if he wants to keep the position solid without changing the pawn structure? There's a way of doing that here. White to play, what would you play here with white? Okay, bishop g4 actually threatens f4 check, and so the bishop would be evicted. And it should just be a draw because white's keeping the blockade. Yeah, it seems as though this is far more committal after taking, although white gets that d pawn. Black now has still a more aggressive king for this endgame. So there's a small advantage here. h4, and it looks as though that pawn's a big target coming up. So yeah, black's got the edge here. King g3. I mean, you might think, well, why was h4 actually played? Well, black might be plotting things like bishop g4 soon and getting the king round to win h2 anyway. So we have h4, king g3, e5 takes. Yes, black's got the outside pass pawn now, but is it that easy? Bishop g4. We have bishop going to a4. King wants to get to g2 to drive this pawn forward. Yep. And here, actually, white resigned. White might have been a little bit intimidated by Paul Keres. I mean, his results in the tournament by round 9 were absolutely, astounding, very good. So yeah, but if he kept his nerve and tried to find best resources, yeah, it seems as though it was holdable. So this is one of many games where, you know, just technique, nothing amazingly sacrificial or spectacular, but still a nice technique approach, fairly riskless play from black. The interesting thing was the temporary pawn sack. So that was quite interesting in the opening. He avoided any structural liabilities. Okay, I hope by looking at these games from the 1950 and 51, we're going to answer a very important question from an evolution of style perspective. What is it about Paul Keres which made him such a great player, basically, in this era? Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks so much.